The silver city of Jaren glimmered under the light of 2 moons. Its towers stretched high, reflecting the stars like mirrors, and the air was filled with a soft hum of energy. From her balcony on the highest tower, Princess Lyra looked out over the city. She was silent, her heart heavy. In her hands, she held the mask that had been part of her life for as long as she could remember. Beneath it, her face was scarred reminders of a battle that had changed everything. The scars twisted across her skin like rivers of pain, and though she had survived, the people around her had never been able to look past them. Lyra had learned to hide. She moved quietly through the palace halls, gliding over polished floors like a shadow. Her family rarely spoke to her. The nobles avoided her eyes. Even her friends from childhood had grown distant, unsure how to act around someone who was no longer perfect. Every smile she gave was carefully measured, every word carefully chosen. She had become a ghost in her own home, seen by many, understood by none. She pressed her palm against the balcony railing, and let her gaze wander to the distant mountains that shimmered in the moonlight. The world outside the city was wild and untamed, full of dangers, but also of freedom. Lyra longed to leave, to run far away from the whispers and the stares, to find a place where her scars did not matter. Yet she could not. Duty bound her to the palace, to a people who expected her to appear flawless, who expected her to wear the mask and pretend nothing had happened. Her mask was not just a shield, it was a prison. Behind it, she could breathe without fear. Behind it, no one could see the sorrow in her eyes, the trembling of her hands when memories of the battle returned. It had been a war for their world, a fight against invaders who had destroyed cities and homes. Lyra had fought bravely, but she had been caught in an explosion that left her face scarred forever. She had survived, but many around her had seen only the aftermath, and the fear of what she looked like had grown louder than any words of praise for her courage. She sighed, the sound carried away by the wind. Sometimes she wondered if anyone could ever look at her and see the person beneath the scars. Would anyone ever care about her dreams, her thoughts, her laughter, without recoiling at her face? She remembered the warmth of her mother's touch before the war, the gentle way her father had praised her curiosity, and the feeling of being loved for who she was, not for what she looked like. Those memories felt distant, like fragile stars she could almost reach but never touch. Lyra often spoke to the night sky, whispering her thoughts to the moons. "If only someone could see me for who I am," she murmured, "not what I look like." Sometimes, she imagined a stranger arriving from the stars, someone brave enough to see her, truly see her and accept her without fear. She would tell them her story, show them her scars, and maybe, just maybe, she would feel whole again. But the fear of rejection always returned, pressing down on her chest. Heavier than any armor she had worn in battle, the princess leaned over the balcony, feeling the cool air against her face, and thought about the life she had before the scars. She had been adventurous, full of laughter and dreams. She had imagined flying through the stars, meeting new worlds, and discovering wonders beyond the city walls. Now, even simple joys felt distant. She smiled behind her mask, but it never reached her eyes. It was a smile for the world, not for herself. And yet, deep inside, a tiny spark of hope remained. Maybe one day, someone would arrive who could see beyond the mask. Someone who would not fear her scars. Someone who would care for her heart and soul instead of her appearance. She did not know when it would happen, or if it ever would. But the thought of it kept her alive, kept her moving through the lonely halls of her palace, kept her breathing under the weight of the world. Princess Lyra held her mask tightly and whispered again to the moons, "I want to be seen. I want to be known. I want to be loved." The wind carried her words into the night, and the stars shimmered as if they had heard her plea. The silence of the palace was broken one morning by a low hum that vibrated through the city. A spaceship descended slowly, its sleek surface reflecting the twin moons and the silver towers. Princess Lyra, standing at her balcony, watched with wide eyes. Ships from other planets rarely came to Jaren. Humans were almost unheard of here. Most were cautious, some fearful. But Lyra felt something stir inside her, a mix of curiosity and something she could not name. The palace gates opened, and the humans were escorted inside. They moved differently than Jaren's people, with energy that was raw yet gentle. Among them was a man with dark hair, bright eyes, and a calm presence. Captain Ethan. He carried no weapons, only a small bag, but there was a quiet strength in him. The court introduced him formally, but Lyra barely noticed the words. She studied him in secret, behind her mask, fascinated by the warmth in his gaze. For days, Ethan explored the city under strict supervision. Always polite, always observing, always learning. The palace expected him to be curious about Sharon's architecture, its culture, its technology. But he asked questions that went deeper, questions about life, about people, about feelings. And when he finally came to meet Princess Lyra, something in his eyes made her heart beat faster. Not because of attraction, at least not at first, but because he seemed different. He did not stare at her mask, did not avoid her. He simply looked at her, as if he wanted to understand her. Lyra remained silent at first, her hands clasping the edge of her mask. "Princess Lyra," Ethan said softly, bowing slightly. "It is an honor to meet you." His voice carried a kind of respect she had not felt in years. It was not fear, not pity, not curiosity. It was calm and honest, as if he already knew she was more than her scars. Thank you," Lyra whispered. She had not spoken so freely in a long time. Something about this human made her want to speak, to share, to reveal herself, even if just a little. Over the next few days, Ethan sought moments to spend time with her. He asked her about her favorite music, the flowers she liked in the palace gardens, the stories of her childhood. Lyra was cautious but found herself answering. She told him about the floating gardens she loved, about the city lights that reflected in the canals at night, and about her dreams before the war. He listened attentively, never interrupting, never judging. One afternoon, they walked together through the crystal gardens, where the plants glowed softly under the moonlight. Lyra told him about the battle that had scarred her face. Her voice trembled, and she almost hid behind her mask, but Ethan did not look away. "You survived," he said quietly. "That alone makes you strong." His words were simple, but they carried a weight she had not felt in a long time. For the first time, she thought someone might understand her, not just her pain, but her courage. Lyra noticed the way Ethan did not flinch when he glimpsed the edge of her scar under the mask. He seemed curious, yes, but in a gentle way. Not judgmental, not fearful. It made her heart ache in a strange way. She realized she wanted to show him everything, to trust him with the face she had hidden for so long. But fear held her back. Fear of rejection, fear of being seen as weak, fear of losing the one connection she had started to feel in a world that had been lonely for centuries. One evening, as the moons rose high and reflected silver on the palace walls, Ethan looked at her and said, "I hope one day you let someone see you, not just your mask, but you. The real you." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust, wanted to remove the walls she had built around herself, but the palace was full of whispers. Servants and nobles murmured behind her back, warning her. "Humans cannot be trusted. He is not like us. Do not show weakness." Those words mixed with her own fear. And for a moment, she stepped back, clutching her mask tighter, yet something inside her stirred, a tiny spark of hope. Maybe he was different. Maybe someone could care for her scars, her heart, her soul. And maybe, just maybe, she could dare to let someone see the real Lyra. As the city lights glimmered below, and the moon shone above, Princess Lyra felt a strange, new emotion, anticipation. She did not yet know how it would end, but for the first time in a long time, she wanted to be brave. She wanted to reach out, even if just a little, toward this human who had seen more than her mask. And somewhere deep inside, she whispered to the stars again, maybe he will understand me. Days passed, and Princess Lyra found herself anticipating Ethan's visits more than she had expected. The palace halls, once empty and cold, seemed warmer when he walked through them. He spoke of Earth, of oceans that stretched beyond the horizon, of skies painted with colors she had never seen. Lyra listened, fascinated, imagining a world so different, yet full of life and courage. For the first time, she felt that someone truly wanted to understand her, not the princess, not the mask, but Lyra herself. They wandered through the crystal gardens together, where glowing plants curved like delicate ribbons and soft lights shimmered on the ponds. Lyra told him stories of her childhood, how she used to climb the lower towers, how she had once tried to tame a wild Geronian bird, and how she loved to paint with colors that reflected the moons. Ethan listened with rapt attention, asking gentle questions that made her smile. It felt strange, almost forbidden, to share herself so openly. But she couldn't stop. One evening, as the twin moons rose high and the city shimmered below, Ethan asked about the battle that had left her scarred. Lyra hesitated, her hands tightening on the edge of her mask. She had spoken of it before in passing, but never in detail. Her voice was barely audible as she recounted the explosion, the pain, and the endless hours of recovery. She expected pity, fear, maybe even disgust, but Ethan's face held none of these. Instead, There was awe, respect, and something deeper. Something that felt like understanding. "You survived," he said softly. "And that makes you stronger than anyone I have ever met." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest she had almost forgotten. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. Her scars, which had always made her feel like a burden, suddenly seemed less frightening. Maybe it was possible to be seen without fear. Maybe someone could see her scars and still care for the person underneath. A few nights later, as they walked through the palace corridors, a small accident revealed a glimpse of her scar. Her mask slipped just enough for the light to catch the edge of the mark. Lyra froze, expecting horror, but Ethan only paused and smiled gently. "Your scars. They tell a story," he said quietly. "They don't hide you. They show your strength." Lyra's heart raced. She wanted to believe him, but fear still clutched at her. The whispers of the nobles, the judgment of her people, all pressed against her mind like shadows. Yet, something inside her stirred a longing to trust, a longing to show herself without hiding. She had waited centuries, it seemed, for someone who could see past the mask, and now he was here. Over the next days, their bond grew stronger. Ethan did not push her to reveal more than she was ready to share. He accepted her pauses, her silences, her cautious smiles. In return, Lyra began to let her guard down. Sharing little pieces of herself she had hidden for so long, the music she liked, the poems she wrote, the way she sometimes dreamed of flying among the stars. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the palace windows, Ethan handed her a small sketchbook. Inside were drawings of Jaren's towers, its gardens, and even her balcony, where he had seen her lost in thought. Lyra turned the pages slowly, tears pricking her eyes. She had never received such a thoughtful gift before. "It's beautiful," she whispered, voice trembling. "But why me?" "Because I see you," Ethan replied simply. "Not just the princess everyone fears, not just the mask you wear. I see you." Lyra wanted to believe him, and a fragile hope began to bloom in her heart. She realized that for the first time, she could imagine a life where someone accepted her fully, scars and all. It was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. She wanted to reach for him, to take the risk of being seen, but the fear of rejection still lingered like a shadow. That night, she lay on her balcony, the twin moons reflecting on her mask. She whispered into the night, "Maybe, just maybe, someone can love me as I am." And for the first time in centuries, she did not feel completely alone. The days of quiet happiness did not last long. The palace, which had always been filled with whispers, now seemed louder than ever. The nobles and advisors who had watched Lyra from the shadows grew uneasy. They murmured behind her back, questioning why she spent so much time with a human, a creature so different from their world. Some said he was a spy. Others called him dangerous. "He does not belong here," they whispered. "Do not let him see the real princess. She must remain flawless, untouchable." Lyra overheard some of the whispers one afternoon while walking through the hall. Her mask felt heavier than usual, pressing against her face as if it carried all the judgment of the court. She clenched her hands at her sides, struggling to keep her composure. She had already begun to trust Ethan, had started imagining a world where she could be herself without fear. But the words of her people struck at her heart like cold knives. That evening, in her private chamber, Lyra paced back and forth, the twin moons casting long shadows across the walls. "Why can't they understand?" she murmured, tears welling in her eyes. "I am still their princess. I am still brave. I am still me." She pressed her palms to her face, feeling the smooth mask that hid the scars no one wanted to see. It had always protected her, but now it felt like a cage. Every whispered warning, every fearful glance, reminded her of how fragile trust could be. Ethan noticed the change immediately when he arrived for their evening walk. "Lyra," he said softly, "what's wrong?" She shook her head, unsure if she could voice the pain that had been growing inside her. They don't want me to spend time with you," she admitted, her voice trembling. "They say humans cannot be trusted. They say I must hide who I am." Ethan took her hands in his, steady and warm. "And what do you feel, Lyra?" he asked gently. "Because I see someone who is strong, who is kind, who deserves to be seen as they truly are. I see you." Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but the weight of centuries of judgment and fear pressed against her. She had hidden for so long, convinced no one could accept her scars, her weaknesses, or even her heart. Now, she was beginning to realize that acceptance came with courage, and courage was terrifying. The following days brought more tension. Courtiers watched their every move. Small incidents like servants gossiping in the hall or nobles giving her cold, judgmental looks made her second-guess every decision. Ethan remained patient, never pushing, always kind, but Lyra could feel the walls closing in around her. She wondered if she was foolish to hope that someone from another world could see her as she truly was. One night, she retreated to her balcony, staring out at the shimmering city. The twin moons reflected in the rivers below, and the wind carried whispers that sounded almost like the voices of the people she longed to please. "Maybe they're right," she whispered, clutching her mask tightly. "Maybe no one can ever love me for who I am, scars and all." But then she remembered Ethan's words, the warmth in his eyes, the way he had called her brave, the way he had accepted her without hesitation. A tiny spark of defiance lit within her heart. Maybe she could defy the fears of the palace. Maybe she could choose to trust, even when the world told her she should not. Lyra took a deep breath, the cold night air filling her lungs. She realized that hiding had only kept her lonely. Wearing the mask might protect her from judgment, but it also kept her from living. She did not yet know how to show herself fully, how to reveal her scars without fear, but she felt a determination grow within her. She would not allow fear to control her. As the city slept below, the princess whispered to herself, "I will not hide forever. One day, someone will see me. One day, I will be brave enough to remove this mask." The words felt like a promise, a quiet vow to herself, stronger than any royal decree. She did not know when that day would come, but she knew it was coming. For the first time, Princess Lyra felt that her heart was no longer entirely imprisoned. A storm of doubt and fear still lingered, but within it was the seed of courage that could change everything. And somewhere, deep in the palace, Ethan was waiting, patient and unwavering, ready to see her for who she truly was. The morning sun poured through the tall windows of the palace, casting golden light across the halls. Princess Lyra stood alone in her chamber, her hands resting on her mask. For nights, she had thought of Ethan's words, the way he had looked at her, gentle and unafraid, the way he had called her brave and strong. His presence lingered in her thoughts like a soft melody, impossible to ignore. Her heart ached with longing. She had spent so long hiding, protecting herself from a world that feared what she looked like. The mask had been her shield, her companion, her comfort. But it had also been a wall, separating her from anyone who might truly understand her. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of centuries of fear pressing on her chest. Today, she decided, might be the day she dared to take a step toward something she had only imagined, a step toward trust, toward courage, toward love. When Ethan arrived, he carried a small bouquet of blue geranium flowers, their petals glimmering softly in the morning light. He moved carefully, as if he sensed the storm of emotions within her. "Good morning, Lyra," he said quietly, offering the flowers with a tentative smile. "I brought these for you." Lyra's hands trembled as she took the flowers, their glow reflecting in her eyes. She wanted to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She felt the mask on her face, heavy and constricting, and suddenly it seemed unbearable. Her fingers hovered over it, and her chest tightened with fear and anticipation. Could she really do it? Could she really show him her true face? Ethan stepped closer, his eyes warm and patient. "Lyra," he said softly, "I want to see you. Not the mask, not the princess everyone expects you to be. I want to see you, please." The sincerity in his voice broke something open inside her. The walls she had built for so long began to tremble. She thought of the nobles, the whispers, the warnings, the fear, but their voices now sounded distant, meaningless compared to the pull in her heart. For the first time, she realized that hiding had only kept her lonely. True strength was not in the mask, but in the courage to be seen. Her fingers finally touched the edge of the mask. Slowly, carefully, she lifted it away. Her breath caught as she revealed her face to him. The scars traced across her skin like rivers of memory, jagged and raw. She expected fear, disgust, perhaps pity, but what she saw in Ethan's eyes was nothing like that. There was awe, wonder, and something even deeper, acceptance. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "Every part of you." Tears welled in Lyra's eyes, spilling over as relief and joy surged through her. For centuries, she had believed that no one could see her and love her, that her scars made her unworthy. But Ethan's words, his gaze, shattered that fear. He saw her, truly saw her, and loved her anyway. Lyra's hands shook as she let the mask slip completely from her face, holding it loosely in her fingers. She had never felt so exposed, yet so safe. She felt the warmth of Ethan's presence, the steadying calm of someone who accepted her fully. The palace walls, the whispers, the judgment, They all faded away. In that moment, there was only her and him, and the quiet understanding that courage could change everything. Ethan gently took her hands in his. "Your scars tell a story, Lyra," he said softly. "They show everything you've survived, everything you've overcome. They do not hide you, they make you who you are." Lyra's chest swelled with emotion. She realized that her mask had protected her, yes, but it had also kept her from being truly alive. Now she felt free. She laughed softly, a sound of pure relief and joy. And Ethan laughed with her. For the first time in centuries, she felt complete, accepted, and loved for who she truly was. Word of her unmasking slowly spread through the palace. Many were shocked, some disapproving. But the citizens of Jaren began to see her in a new light. They saw courage, honesty, and strength, the true qualities of a leader, far beyond appearances. Lyra realized that her scars did not make her weak, they made her strong, and showing herself had changed not only her life, but the way others saw her as well. That night, as the twin moons rose over the city, Lyra and Ethan stood together on the balcony. Her face was uncovered, radiant under the soft moonlight. She felt a deep, new sense of hope and love. For centuries, she had hidden behind a mask. Now she had chosen to be seen, and in doing so, she had discovered a strength she had never known. And in that moment, Princess Lyra understood something profound. Courage was not about perfection. Courage was about being seen. Courage was about trusting that someone could love the real you. The morning after Lyra revealed her face to Ethan, the palace seemed different. The golden sunlight filtered through the high windows, bouncing off the silver walls and reflecting in ways that made the halls sparkle like stars. For centuries, Lyra had moved through these corridors like a shadow, unseen and untouched. Now, her presence was impossible to ignore. She walked with a quiet confidence, her uncovered face radiant in the light. At first, many nobles and courtiers were shocked. Some whispered behind closed doors, questioning her courage, questioning the human who had seen her scars. But slowly, very slowly, their whispers changed. They began to notice something they had never seen before: the strength in her eyes, the honesty in her smile, the bravery that shone far brighter than any mask could hide. Lyra's scars were no longer marks of shame. They were symbols of survival, of resilience, of a life lived fully despite pain. The citizens of Jaren began to take notice too. The story of the princess who had hidden her face for fear of rejection spread quickly. When they saw her walking openly, smiling freely, interacting without hesitation, admiration replaced fear. Children who had never dared approach her waved, and servants who had always kept their distance now bowed with genuine respect. She was no longer a figure to be whispered about, she was a leader to be admired. Lyra felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, yes. Joy, yes, but also pride. For centuries, she had believed that her scars made her weak, that she was unworthy of trust, of love, of admiration. But now she saw that showing herself, being brave enough to remove her mask, had changed not only her life but the lives of everyone around her. Courage had ripple effects far beyond her imagination. Ethan stayed by her side through it all. He never faltered, never doubted her, never turned away. When the nobles hesitated to approach, he spoke to them gently, always treating Lyra as someone to be respected. When the citizens stared in wonder, he smiled at her, giving silent encouragement. Lyra realized that part of her newfound strength came from knowing someone saw her fully and loved her anyway. One afternoon, as they walked through the crystal gardens, a small group of children approached Lyra. They had heard the stories of her bravery and curiosity, and they wanted to see her themselves. The princess knelt to their level, laughing as the children touched her hands and marveled at the small glowing flowers she showed them. It was a moment of pure connection, simple and heartfelt, and Lyra felt something she had never felt before: the longing. She belonged here, not because of perfection or appearances, but because of who she truly was. The palace council eventually summoned her for a meeting. Expecting lectures or admonishment, Lyra was surprised to find respect instead. They praised her bravery, her honesty, and her ability to inspire the people. Her scars, once a source of shame, were now celebrated as a mark of experience and courage. Lyra realized that what she had feared most, the judgment of others, had been transformed into admiration simply because she dared to be seen. That evening, standing on her balcony with Ethan, Lyra felt the cool night breeze brush her face. The twin moons reflected softly in her eyes, and she turned to him with a smile that reached every corner of her heart. "I never imagined it could feel like this," she said quietly. "To be seen and accepted." Ethan held her hands gently. "You've always been brave," he said. "You just needed someone to remind you that your scars, your heart, your truth, they are beautiful. And now everyone else sees it too." Lyra leaned into him, feeling a warmth she had long thought impossible. For the first time, she understood that courage was not just about fighting battles in the world, it was about fighting the battles within. She had faced centuries of fear, hiding, and doubt, and now she had won the most important battle of all, acceptance of herself. As the city slept below, Lyra lifted her head to the stars. She could feel the life around her, the hope she had inspired, and the love she had found. She was no longer a hidden princess, a shadow behind a mask. She was Lyra Scarred, strong, brave, and loved. And in that knowledge, she felt a freedom so deep it made her heart soar. For the first time in her life, Princess Lyra felt completely alive.